Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is one of the most confusing games to discuss when talking about the lore of the franchise, especially because of all the evidence saying that this game is most likely a dream, or at least the events taking place within it. Typically, the game is placed at the beginning of the timeline. I know I did the same in my video, which you should totally watch, by the way. It's like by far my biggest video, because I posted it right when Security Breach was coming out, and it's pretty good. But I think I have a pretty compelling argument for putting it somewhere else on the timeline. Before we get lost in the sauce, hey there, I'm Rytoast. I stream on Twitch, and I also post videos here weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, on YouTube. No, wait. Not bi-weekly, that's once every other week. Twice a week. Whatever that word is. Normally I'd say to like and subscribe in like a weird way, because it really helps growing channels like mine, but I've been told that it's actually better to do that in the middle of the video, so I'll try to remember to do that then, I guess. Now, before we get right into breaking the status quo, let's establish it. Why do most fans place FNAF 4 in the beginning of the timeline? Well, there is some compelling stuff here. First, the in-between night minigames 100% take place at the very beginning of the timeline. They depict an alive Evan Afton in the week leading up to the deadly bite of 1983, which kills him. This is the death of who was known previously as the Crying Child, and the motivation for the first missing children incident. The date and events place these minigames squarely in the beginning of the franchise, and by proxy, suggest the game takes place then as well. Furthermore, the game itself takes place in the bedroom of the late Evan Afton himself, suggesting that we are playing as Evan, who either has to be alive, having these dreams, or is in some sort of purgatory like I originally suspected in my timeline. If he is alive, that's even more evidence that we're talking about the beginning of the franchise, not to mention the allusions to a hospital as we go through. All of this evidence seems to suggest that these games take place before any other game, as we're trying to survive through the nightmares of Evan Afton, possibly during a coma after the bite of 1983. It's a satisfying explanation, and one that I myself had believed. But I think there's an equally or nearly as compelling explanation and placement for this game. And it's way later in the timeline. Actually, concurrently with another game. Where? Well, I'm suggesting that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 takes place at the same time of the next game in the series, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Okay, let me explain. First, what links could possibly be drawn between these two games? First, and most obvious, location. FNAF 4 takes place in Evan Afton's bedroom, which would be inside the old Afton household. Sister location mostly takes place in an underground bunker, where the funtime animatronics are held. That bunker is directly underneath the old Afton house, and there's like mountains of evidence to prove that. First, we can see Michael Afton taking breaks between the nights in the living room. For further confirmation, during the Ennard fight or custom night, if you enter some numbers, you can show an Easter egg to display the security cameras old man Willie placed around the house to spy on his children. A doting father indeed. In doing so, it shows the rooms of the Afton house. Just to beat you over the head with evidence that this game takes place in the Afton household, look at this map. During the Fuse minigame, you see a map of the whole facility, but in the corner, there's this odd detached blueprint. That, believe it or not, is the layout of the Afton household. Okay, so beyond a shadow of a doubt, this game takes place at the Afton house, just like the other game. But I hear you. Other than location, how could these games be linked? I mean, don't the minigames prove that this game takes place before any others? Not quite. You are right, the minigames are at the beginning of the timeline, but there's no rule that says the minigames happen at the same time of the game they're in. Actually, we have evidence of exactly the opposite. In FNAF 3, we see minigames of the original FNAF animatronics being ripped apart by William. Something that definitely happened way before the game is taking place, either during FNAF 2 or right before FNAF 1 or after. It's hard to exactly place. In FNAF 6 or Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator, we see two minigames that take place way before the game is, like we were talking about actually beginning of the timeline. First is William luring away one of the first 5 victims. And then there's this weird, unplaceable minigame. Like, it's definitely at the beginning because it's implied that Evan is still alive, but it's hard to tell exactly when because it's just so odd. So we have no evidence that the minigames actually take place at the same time of the games they're in, but we do have evidence of exactly the opposite, that minigames can take place whenever, and it's kind of like just the way of us getting lore. So the minigame evidence should just be thrown out for now. Alright, we have evidence that the games might not take place in 1983, and we also have evidence, strong evidence, that they both take place at the same location, the old Afton house. But then what narrative gets presented? Are we to assume that in FNAF 4, the person having the nightmares is Michael Afton, not Evan? What story does that game then tell? Michael Afton, after chasing up the note left behind by his father, arrives at the old house. He hasn't been there for a long time, but he had to see if his sister was really down there somewhere. He goes down and finds the Funtime animatronics. And on the first night, hears a voice just like his sister's.
I don't recognize you. You are new. I remember this scenario, however. It's a strange thing to want to do, to come here. I'm curious what events would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place like this, willingly. Maybe curiosity, maybe ignorance.
Once he comes up after his shift, he's having a full mental breakdown. The animatronics, his sister, his old house, he starts having nightmares of those times. The times where he lost his sister and accidentally caused the death of his brother. Nightmares of the robots that took away his family. Nightmares filled with imagery to remind him of the hospital he got his own kid brother put in. And after a few more shifts of this torture, he learns what the Funtimes are truly capable of. Their snatching ability. The cavity in their chest that can open up and swallow a child whole. Exactly what happened to his sister. Now that he finally knows the truth, a new nightmare appears. Still wrapped in the guilt over Evan, a new antagonist. A vision of the bear that killed his brother with the mouth that killed his sister. Michael's worst fears realized. And soon after facing this, he as well is killed. No wonder why his spirit wouldn't quit once his body was vacated. Whether it be the remnant on his body, the agony in his soul, or his own unfinished business, Michael had been through hell, and was now determined to find his father and end this. Sorry to be so melodramatic, but I wanted to have a spin at it. I am a voice actor on the side. But that's the theory. What do you think? I think I'm going to do an updated timeline for hitting 5,000 subscribers, if we do. Fingers crossed. And I think when I do, this is what I'm going to run with. I feel really confident about this, but let me know in the comments. Did I get something wrong? Do you explain it some other way? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you really want to get that updated timeline, by the way, consider subscribing to help me get there. Or if you already did, maybe share the video. I don't know. Honestly, doing these call to actions still feels really weird and whack, but it's proven that it helps engagement, so I gotta do it, so sorry. Shout out to my #1 patron, Emberisk, and as always, stay toasty.